The Guardian newspaper in England says the National Security Agency monitored the phone conversations of 35 world leaders.
Domestic surveillance programs, there were mass surveillance programs that worked internationally.
Telephone surveillance.
Hundreds of spies.
Flying spy planes.
On the charge of espionage.
Espionage.
Espionage. Espionage.
Espionage.
Sensitive military information.
Canada is spying for the United States.
Spy.
Spies. Spy.
Spy.
Spies working for the CIA.
Wiretap.
Court.
Scott.
Washington is running a secret intelligence campaign.
This is the story about how the US spent $250 million to acquire a surveillance drone that spies on Africa. It's the story about how deep the US worldwide espionage is, and how America spies even on its allies, and how phone calls and internet activities of millions of ordinary people all across the globe are being tapped by the US. But how did it all begin? On Wednesday, April 19, 1775, the American Revolutionary War began at the battles of Lexington and Concord. This war started as a reaction to numerous unfair taxes imposed by the British Parliament on the American colonies and restrictions on American trade and representations, among other things. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is about what happened in October 1778, which led to the American victory in that war. It was 3 years after the war began. George Washington had been leading the war using all the traditional warfare tactics, including using people like Lawrence Maskell as spies against the British Army. As a 45-year-old Army general, Washington must have read Commentary de Bello Gallico. Commentary de Bello Gallico is a book written by the great Roman Emperor Julius Caesar, in which he wrote about how he won the Gallic War. It was September of 52 BC. The people of Gaul who lived in present-day France, Belgium, Germany and Switzerland had formed a confederation under the Gallic king, King Vercingetorix. The Gauls had gathered a huge army of 240,000 soldiers to fight the 60,000 soldiers of the Roman Empire. But there was a problem. Even though the Gaul had an army that was 4 times the size of the Roman army, Julius Caesar had a superior spy network. Through his spies, Caesar was able to gather information about the size of the Gallic army, their locations, strengths, and weaknesses. Knowing who they were, where they were coming from, and what they planned to do, Caesar constructed 2 lines of fortifications, one facing outward to defend against potential relief forces, and another facing inwards to prevent the escape of the Gauls. Vercingetorix's army was trapped between Caesar's fortifications at the hilltop town of Alesia, where the forces were besieged and destroyed by the Roman army. If, for the sake of argument, we agree that George Washington didn't read Commentary de Bello Gallico, I can bet my tomorrow's breakfast that he had read and studied the British Battle of Cadiz. It was 1596. King Philip II of Spain had assembled a fleet of 140 ships and 24,000 men to invade England and overthrow the Protestant monarch, Queen Elizabeth I. Elizabeth knew that she could not match the Spanish in terms of military strength, so she relied on her spy network to gather intelligence about the Spanish fleet. Francis Walsingham, one of the heads of the Queen's administration, worked with the palace spies to gather information about Spain's preparations. Through coded messages, intercepted communications, and extensive reconnaissance efforts, the English Queen received critical intelligence about the Spanish ships, their exact size, the composition of the fleet, the sailing plans, and routes. On June 20th, 1596, Queen Elizabeth I sent a fleet of 15 ships and 6,000 men under the command of Lord Charles Howard and Sir Francis Drake to intercept the Spanish fleet. The English fleet arrived at Cadiz, took the Spanish army by surprise, and quickly overwhelmed the enemy. Over 12,000 Spanish soldiers were killed, 53 Spanish ships were burnt and captured. That was how the Queen of England defeated a Spanish army that was 4 times more powerful than hers. Regardless of which war George Washington had studied before 1775, he sure knew what he needed in order to defeat a much more powerful British army, and that was a superior spy network. By 1776, Washington had already been using traditional spies to gather information about the British Army. But there was a problem. Washington's spies were not effective. Yes, they got some information from the enemy, but the failure rates were high. For example, one of the spies, Captain Nathan Hale, traveled to New York City under a false identity in September 1776, intending to gather information about the British Army, but he was quickly captured by the British and executed on September 22, 1776. By 1778, General Washington had been thinking about how to have a discreet and well-organized espionage system to infiltrate British operations. This then led to 3 revolutionary ideas. First, it's better to use civilians as spies than soldiers because civilians would attract less attention. Second, using women as spies could be better if you can get them to talk less. Third, having spies on different levels or statuses of society and keeping the activities of these spies hidden from each other could make an effective espionage system. Washington asked William Dewar to recommend a suitable spy agent. Dewar recommended Nathaniel Sackett and Captain Benjamin Tallmadge, who later became the head of Washington's spy network. In October 1778, a network of spies named Cooper Ring was formed, and it was through this secret organization that General Washington gathered important information about the British, their plans, strengths, and weaknesses. For example, in July 1779, the Cooper Ring informed Washington about the British plan to attack Fort Montgomery and Fort Clinton. In September 1780, the Cooper Ring informed Washington of the British plan to attack West Point. In July 1779, the Cooper Ring provides Washington with information about British troop movements that helps him win the Battle of Stony Point. In October 1781, the Cooper Ring provided Washington with information about British troop movements that helped him win the Battle of Yorktown. You get the idea. Today, many historians believe that the Cooper Ring was the reason why America won the War of Independence. David Kahn, historian and author of The Code Breakers, The Story of Secret Writing, said, "The Cooper Ring is a reminder of the importance of intelligence in warfare. It helped Washington outmaneuver the British and win the American Revolutionary War." So now, there's a country called America. Like most other countries before it, America didn't just want to be a country. In his book, Founding Fathers, The Revolutionary Generation, Joseph J. Ellis wrote, "The Founding Fathers were not only revolutionary, but also imperialists." In the same book, he wrote, "The American Revolution was not simply a war for independence, it was also a war for empire." While countries around the world spy on their enemies, empires take it a step further. Empires spy on everyone. And that's exactly what America does.
That the U.S. has been spying on its allies.
The United States spied on the European Union.
The U.S. National Security Agency spied on the last 3 French presidents.
Spy on top politicians, including Chancellor Angela Merkel and German President Frank-Walter.
The U.S. has been eavesdropping on key allies, including South Korea, Israel, Ukraine.
Caught spying on its friends.
Caught snooping on their allies.
Spied on some of its closest allies. Intercepted phone calls.
It was offered money.
Violating the law. Everything that they could monitor, they were monitoring.
On April 19, 2016, the US military began operations at an African military base called Air Base 201. Air Base 201 is a drone surveillance base located in the city of Agadez, Niger, West Africa. This American drone surveillance base covers 25 kilometers and consists of a 6,200-foot runway, 1.1 million square feet of asphalt, aprons, taxiways, massive aircraft hangars, multi-story living quarters, roads, utilities, munitions storage, and an aircraft rescue and firefighting station. Airbase 201 can accommodate about 1,000 US military personnel, according to a spokesperson for the US Air Forces in Europe and Air Forces Africa. The base, which has cost the US $250 million since 2016, is considered the key US surveillance hub in West Africa. Because I didn't finish school, I asked Google, "What is drone surveillance?" And this is what I get. Drone surveillance is the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to capture still images and video from a distance or at a high altitude to gather information about specific targets, which may be individuals, groups, or the environment. In other words, the US created a surveillance drone base in Africa to spy on Africa. And just before you think this is a small deal, Airbase 201 is just one of the many US surveillance bases in Africa. In addition to Airbase 201, the US military operates a second drone facility known as Airbase 101 at the main commercial airport in Niger's capital, Niamey. For East Africa surveillance, the US military has a base called Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, East Africa. According to the Intercept's report, since 2002, the base has expanded from 88 acres to nearly 600 and spun off a satellite outpost 10 kilometers to the southwest, where drone operations in the country were relocated in 2013. While testifying to Congress on March 23, 2023, US General Michael Langley said, the command also operates out of 12 other posture locations throughout Africa. Even though he mentions just 12, the Pentagon map reveals that as of 2020, the US has 29 military bases in Africa. At this point in this video, you may want to ask, why do African nations allow American surveillance drones to spy on their countries? Well, those American military bases in Africa and their high-tech surveillance drones got there in the name of military assistance. Let's say a country in Africa like Mali has some security challenges. The US would offer to help by building its military bases across the country. With these military bases come drone surveillance and other surveillance technologies. Then you may want to ask, but why does the US need to spy on Africa? You see, to remain the most powerful empire in the world, America doesn't just have to spy on Africa. It has to spy on the whole world. The evidence for this claim is Edward Snowden's 2013 leaks.
Edward Snowden is a wanted man. He's already leaked information about the government tracking America's phone records, but U.S. officials don't know how much other classified information he has.
In 2013, former CIA employee Edward Snowden became a whistleblower against the U.S. Edward copied 1.7 million classified documents from the American National Security Agency, NSA, and started releasing them to the press. Starting on June 5, 2013, the whole world began to read about the unimaginable espionage activities of the United States against everyone in the world. When I said unimaginable, this is what I mean. Traditionally, countries around the world spy on their enemies to know what their enemies are planning and to protect themselves against such enemies. In his 4th century BC book, The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "One who knows the enemy and knows himself will not be endangered in 100 engagements." This is the basis and unspoken rule of espionage. Know thy enemy. But that was the rule for a country. For the US as an empire, there's a different rule. Spy on everyone. Spy on your friends, your allies, your enemies, and every citizen of the world. According to the thousands of pages of leaked documents released by Edward Snowden, as of 2013, the United States had been listening to the phone calls and communications of the then German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Communications by the then French President François Hollande had been intercepted. David Cameron, the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Dilma Rousseff, President of Brazil, Enrique Peña Nieto, President of Mexico, and at least 30 other leaders of the world have been bugged, and their communications are being listened to by the US security agency. The activities in the embassies of countries around the globe, the computers countries are using inside UN buildings, the phone records of millions of citizens of other countries, the internet activities of millions of citizens of other countries. Just open your dictionary and read what the words everything and everybody means. That's who the US is spying on. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video.